Alrighty, hey guys. So this is actually going to be my first stream. I'm basically just going to go through and do some photo editing and kind of my process on how I cull my photos and go through my editing process. So we're just going to have some kind of chill music in the background. And if anybody has any comments or any type of questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I am going to be putting this on my YouTube channel as well. So if you missed the VOD or the stream, feel free to head over to my YouTube and watch from there. But I do hope you guys enjoy, and I will be back in just a minute. I'm gonna start up the music, and we're just gonna kind of hang out and chill. So let's do this. Awesome. Okay, guys. So basically, what we're doing in the time is we're just going to be doing what is called culling photos. So basically, the way that culling photos works is as we are going through the actual photos themselves, I use a program called Photo Mechanic, which is just one of many operating softwares for those who cull photos. Some people do it directly into Lightroom. I like to cull my photos and then put them into Lightroom. So basically, as we're going through the photos, I'll be kind of going through, seeing which ones I like better. Sometimes I take multiple photos of the same car, obviously at different angles, vertical, horizontal. And so when we do actually get into the editing process, I'll kind of go over how I go through and edit the photos themselves. But as of right now, we're just kind of going through, making sure that everything is in focus, or in focus like I want them to, so I can zoom into the photos and kind of look at them, be like, oh, well, this one's not quite as in focus in the areas that I wanted it to. And most of the time, if you're taking photos, obviously nothing is going to be completely in focus because you are using a lower aperture. If you don't know what aperture is basically how blurry a photo is, how much the actual photo or subject is in focus. So right now I'm using a 1.4 aperture, which is pretty low for car photography. Normally I like to sit between 1.4 and 2.8. 2.8 is mostly when I am shooting either automotive, like rally racing or drifting and stuff like that, because that way, as the cars are going by, I still catch the whole photo. So as we go through, I basically just highlight the photo. So I press T on my keyboard, so it will check the bottom right. That might be out of focus for you guys, just because I had to crop it in a tiny bit to fit the whole screen. But just know that the photos that I deem worthy of editing will get a little check mark. The ones that I don't won't. And so once I'm done culling all my photos, then we basically go through and pick the photos that I actually like. So where this one, I like this photo better than this one because there's obviously a leg in the foreground, plus it shows the owners and whatnot. So I'm gonna choose this one, and then this one is just the single section of the car. I probably should have bumped the aperture a little bit on this one because the tail end of the car is a little bit out of focus, more than I would have liked, but it's still a good photo. I prefer the 3/3 rule, or the 1/3 rule, sorry. Basically, try to keep the subject in at least 1/3 of the frame. So If you're shooting multiple cars, try to keep obviously the whole frame in focus, but the whole car in the frame. This one is kind of in the bottom left thirds of the photo, which gives it a nice little off center, but not enough so that it looks awkward to the viewer. Whereas this one is a bit more centered. But this one's a little bit more straight on. Unfortunately, I did cut the bumper off a little bit more than I had liked. So this was just a thrown together shoot. I was just hanging out at a car meet, and I wasn't actually like shooting for any clients or anything like that. So it was just kind of thrown together. No ideas, just some of the cars that I liked at the meet. Obviously, this is the start of the meet, so it is going to get a little darker as we continue on. Yeah, this is a really good shot. It's very, very centered, but also has a good perspective of the car. I always prefer to show a little bit more of the foreground, or the top of the car. So, unlike this one, I would probably choose this one over this one. And then obviously as you go through your photos and stuff like that, you will check different settings. So I went a little darker with this one just because I wanted the foreground to be a little bit lighter. But it's a really good 3/4 shot of the rear. Basically gives a good tail end aspect of the car. The background is all blurred out, and the skies, you're not really going to see a whole lot just because it was just light enough that I wanted to keep the car in the process of the actual car in color and exposed correctly. Sorry. Like I said, these are all kind of just thrown together, so I don't really have any rhyme or reason on taking the pictures that I do. This is a really, really cool Stagia. It's kind of like a Skyline wagon. So obviously a lot of these cars were right-hand drive. They don't really have a whole lot of modifications, but this one was decently modded. These have to be imported because we never got them here in the States. We do have a lot of Skylines and R32s, 34s, 33s. But Stagias are one of those that you don't see very often just because most people don't like the wagon, but I'm a super big fan of them. And then we have this Evo 5, so pretty. Definitely one of my dream cars. I mean, I prefer honestly a Evo 7, maybe an Evo 6, but the Evo 5s look so good, and he's done very well to tastefully mod this. He imported this from Japan as well. He said he's had pretty much the entire engine rebuilt, so that was pretty cool. Super good guy. These are kind of just some more artistic type of shot when you're playing around with different photos and whatnot. And just a typical rear end shot, trying to get all the little bits and pieces in there. And then obviously you gotta show the evolution. Some of the interior shots, a nice little Momo steering wheel. I believe these came on the Evo 5s, obviously with the Roman numeral for 5, plus the yellow stitching and stuff like that just looks so good. Gauges, they're pretty basic, relatively speaking, but You do see that the gauges are actually in kilometers because obviously Japan and pretty much every other country in the world besides the United States do kilometers per hour instead of miles per hour. So, just a little closer of the steering wheel. Back to the Stasia, because like I said, I was just walking around and just kind of shooting the shit with a bunch of the people who were actually at the meet. This was the season opener for one of my buddies who runs the club, and he did a killer job setting this thing up, and we had a huge turnout. It was a lot of fun. That's actually the headlight to my Z. I didn't take any pictures of my own Z just because I've got enough, to be honest. But and this beautiful GT3 RS showed up. I was so stoked. Basically, like a $300,000 car, if not more, just showed up out of nowhere. And then I'm not sure if I actually took any photos of it, but there was a Lamborghini as well as an R8 that showed up. Plus, too, obviously, you got to take some pictures of the puppos. One of my favorite things to do at car meets and rally events and any other kind of motorsports is find the dogs. Obviously, the dogs are the best part. If you have a dog that's not totally skittish and scared of the loud noises and whatnot, I love finding them, especially this little derpy dude. I mean, obviously, Washington State has a bunch of Mopars and Corvettes and Subarus, but this one kind of stood out, obviously, for more just the wrap for the most part. But obviously, purple is my favorite color, so that's kind of the whole reason I like this one. Didn't take too many pictures of this, so just kind of threw a couple. This little dog was so energetic and so just all over the place. So I was doing my best to try to take some pictures of it. I got like one or two, nothing spectacular, unfortunately, but yeah, that was kind of the rest of the photos that I took at the meet. I didn't take a whole lot just because obviously, like I said, this is the season opener, and I kind of wanted to just enjoy it, talk to some new people, a couple people I've never met before. Whenever it comes to the actual meet itself, it was a lot of fun, and got a lot of compliments and comments on my 280Z. Maybe I'll do a stream one day that I edit a full set of my own car, but right now it's just doing this. So we are going to switch back over to the actual mechanic sense. Now that I have picked out all the photos and whatnot that I want, I basically come up here to where it says all. If I click this and I hit tagged, basically these are all the ones that I have decided are worthy of editing. So I'll pretty much just click on this top one, make sure it's highlighted, and then Control A for Control All, and that way everything is highlighted. I personally have a folder that I like to bring the cold photos into so I can then transfer over to Lightroom. So you click and hold, drag them in here, and then they basically just get transferred over to Lightroom. Or to the folder, sorry. And then we basically just switch over to Lightroom. And then once we get over to Lightroom, we are now showing my Lightroom. We come up here to where it says the file and then add photos, or you can just hit the add photos button right here. Either way works. I'm going to, you can't see this part, but I'm basically going into my my folder with the cold photos, and then I'm going to choose all of the raw files. So I always personally shoot in RAW, just because whenever it comes to editing photos, you have a lot more flexibility, and anytime that you can edit a photo that has a bit more, basically, more information to process. It's a little bit better just because obviously whenever you're going through and i.e. the photos are darker or there's too much light and you have to bring things back, it's a little easier to do that with a raw photo comparatively to JPEG, which obviously doesn't have as much, but it is a lot smaller of a file. RAWs are always usually a lot bigger. So now you kind of see all of the photos that I have. They do unfortunately get imported backwards, so from the oldest to the newest, or newest to the oldest, sorry. So you come down here to this little button and you hit reverse order. So we're gonna pop that over, and then now we have the start of the photos comparatively to the end of the photos. So we're going to start with this one. So obviously the photo looks pretty good as it is, but I'm going to kind of go over just kind of what my process looks like whenever I'm editing. I'm going to move this over a little bit so you guys can see the actual side process. Okay, so this over here shows all of my, all of the type of things that you can edit on the whole photo. So yes, I know it's controversial, but I'm a little lazy whenever it comes to photos. So I just kind of hit auto. Let Lightroom kind of do its own thing to start the photo, which that alone is fine for most people. Obviously I like to go in and do everything else myself. So first I'm going to come down here, kind of see what Lightroom thinks the colors should look like. I'm a Canon shooter. I know most people are Sony or other Nikon or whatever, but I've been shooting on Canon since high school, so I'm a Canon boy through and through. So I like to give all my photos kind of a little bit more of a warmer sense. So this is nice, but giving it just a little bit more, so like 6200, almost 6300, gives a nice warmth to the photo. I also try to give a little bit more magenta into the color, so it gives the ground less of a like a greenish mossy look. I am using what is called a polarizing filter on the front of my camera lens. So basically, as you spin the polarizer, you kind of get the reflections or other things on the car that can basically cause a reflection. You will have the polarizer kind of takes that off. Actually, I can kind of show you in this next photo. So see how the window is a little bit more bright and whatnot. If you go to this photo, you can see how the window darkens up. That's because I whenever I shot the first photo, I twisted the polarizer, and then whenever I turned the camera over to vertical or horizontal, sorry, the polarizer obviously doesn't move with the camera, so I had to readjust the lens, which I didn't in time. So the side and whatnot is all polarized, I guess is the right word. Whereas this one, it's kind of the opposite. It's more of the front side of the car, which is more kind of what I like to do is the front side of the windshield. Some people like to do a multi-shoot of the same photo, turning the polarizer as you go through. Whenever you do that, it's basically you stack all the photos onto each other, and it just shows basically what the type of car would look like if everything got polarized. But Anyway, back to the main photo. So we're pretty much not going to do anything else with this. We're kind of going to go over here to the masking, and then we're going to hit subject. So sometimes whenever AI and Lightroom sees that there's other things or other people in the picture, it'll automatically clip them in. It's not a huge deal, but if you don't want that, you can just kind of hit the subtract button and you can brush them out, basically. Or you can do the objects, which is a little easier because then you can kind of choose exactly what you want. So I'm just gonna take him out of the and obviously AI works just horrible most of the time, but so in that case I'm not going to worry about it. I don't really care that much. Like I said, this is kind of just a thrown together shoot. And then now that the mask is set, you're going to come over here to the little three dots, and then you're going to duplicate and invert. So that's basically going to cause it to basically highlight everything that wasn't highlighted for the first mask. So the first mask is more just the subject. The backwards mask is kind of everything else. So as of right now, to be honest, the background is already pretty dark, just because, like I said, the sun was setting, and you've got that golden hour, which is really nice. So we're going to kind of just play a little bit. We're going to up the contrast just a little bit, probably 20. We're going to bring the highlights down just a little bit. Doesn't do a whole lot to the photo, but it basically just it brings the trees out and whatnot. We're going to kind of keep the shadows as they are, because obviously you don't really want a whole lot. We're going to keep the whites up a little bit just so it brings out the color in the trees, and then we're going to bring the blacks down just a little bit. The temperature's already pretty good with the colors, so I'm not really going to mess with that a lot, because if you bring it up anymore, you're gonna cause like unnatural looking orange. You don't really want to do a whole lot with the effects. Maybe a little bit of dehaze. It just kind of lets the darks and the highlights kind of relax a little bit. You don't really want to do anything with the sharpness, because it won't do a whole lot, because obviously the background is not in focus. So I'm going to throw a little bit of noise reduction, because obviously as the photos continue, I'm having to raise my ISO to compensate for the darkness that is coming. I try to keep everything kind of within 400 to 800 if I can, just because that's like the natural ISO of the camera that I'm using. And then and then I'm going to come over here to the mask 1. Right now the car is pretty well lit. I'm going to raise up the exposure just a little bit. Contrast is pretty good. I'm not really going to mess with that a whole lot. Bring down the highlights just a tiny bit. I am going to bring up the shadows a decent amount, though, because I'm going to try and bring up the wheels for the most part. So we're going to bring those up by about 25. Not really doing a whole lot with the white, probably 15. So with the blacks, I'm not going to crush them a whole lot, just because obviously the wheels are black and everything else is kind of black around it. So I don't really want to mess with that a whole lot, just because obviously if I blast the blacks down too much, then you're not really going to see anything. But if I raise them, then it's just going to cause almost an unnatural light with the wheels and tires and everything like that. So I'm going to bring them up just a tiny bit, but probably only like 5, just enough. For the car itself, I'm not really going to, like I said, raise it or lower it. Maybe I will raise it a little bit. It's a little bluer than I'd like, so we're going to bring it up to like, go 6. What we are going to do, though, we're going to bring up the clarity just a tiny bit. So with the clarity, it'll drop a little bit of the color. So not a whole lot, but just enough to kind of give the paint and the other miscellaneous pieces a bit of a pop. Bring the dehaze up just a little bit, not quite that much. Bring the sharpness up about 15. Noise reduction like 20. And then that's pretty much it, honestly. One thing that you can do, which is one thing that I recommend, is whenever you're going to use car photos, or you're going to be editing photos, take a linear mask, kind of bring it up to the edge of the wheels. And then while you have the linear mask, you can drop the exposure of the ground a little bit. Not a whole lot, but just enough to it basically makes your eyeballs... Uh-oh. What's going on? Wait just a second, chat. Looks like my screen is having a fit. Don't know what's going on. Okay. Sorry about that. We're back now. Anyway, as I was saying, basically the actual ground itself you can darken just a little bit, so it brings your eyes more to the actual subject of the photo, which is the car. So whenever you're going through it, you don't want to darken it too much, just because obviously whenever you're playing around with it, if you darken it too much, then obviously it looks unnatural. But I would say bring it down like maybe 2, maybe 1 stop, something like that. Nothing crazy, but just enough that it kills out the color. But yeah, so that's the first edit. Like I said, it's just thrown together. It's nothing crazy. Didn't want to try, but if you look at the before and after, it's pretty remarkable how much a little bit of editing does for a photo. I mean, we're going through editing just miscellaneous things, but this is the before, or this is the after, and then this is before. So I mean, quite a drastic change, I would say. Just bringing out just enough color and pop to the cars. Like I said, I am a little lazy whenever it comes to my edits. So what I'll usually do is I will edit the first photo, and then I'll pretty much just copy and paste. As I go through, I kind of just tweak little settings. If I don't like the certain edit, I'll just kind of throw it away and restart. But most of the time I will actually go through and just do everything. So yeah, whenever I do grab a new photo, obviously I'm just going to hit this little paste button down here. So it pastes all the settings that I copied from the previous one, so let me go back to that. So if you go to these 3 little dots over here, you hit that, go to choose edit settings to copy. Make sure to hit mask. And then you can take away the remove because I didn't remove anything. And then just typical auto settings. So copy that. And then now that we are here, we're going to hit paste. And then let the AI and whatnot do its thing. So unfortunately, like I was saying, the AI of Lightroom does really, really well most of the time. But as you can see, Lightroom chose the people over the car, which obviously is not really what I wanted. So we're going to go into these, and for the mask one, which is the subject itself, we're going to go add, and then we're going to do the objects button. And we're pretty much just going to highlight over the entire car. So, kind of like this. And there you go. Lightroom does a pretty good job about highlighting whatever you choose as the object. And then vice versa, we're going to go over to the background mask, and we're going to subtract the car. So we're going to highlight the car again. Yep. And there you go. So now that the background and everything is good, I'm going to do this. I did forget one thing with the mask for the ground. Make sure to subtract your subjects, and obviously I have to subtract the car itself because the car is not actually one of the ones that AI subject tracking chooses as the thing. So we're going to go back into the mask. I'm actually going to lower that down a bit because it's a little too bright for my liking. So drop that down. Go 40. Drop this 6. Yeah, we'll go 48 on that one. And then we are going to drop the exposure down a tiny bit on this. That way it doesn't look unnatural. Bring the shadows down a little bit. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I kind of just go through, and when you are editing the photos and editing whatever, you kind of just go through and choose which settings you want, and then I just copy paste. Obviously, some people will go through every single photo and edit them differently, or just reset their edit every single time. I don't like to do that just because of the fact that it makes, in my opinion, your photos look different. If you copy and paste your photos, most of the time they kind of stay as a like a general edit all throughout your photos, so you're not confusing whatever viewer you're sharing these to, because of the fact that you are causing the edits to either get brighter or way too dark, or completely change the color in general. That's the main reason that I like to keep the edits copy paste. Plus two, I'm lazy, and you know, it's a very common editing trope, which is probably, in my opinion, probably a better type of situation, but oh well. Anyway, yeah, so we're gonna kind of just continue with the photos. We're gonna go back to this one. So as you can tell, without the people in the way, the car and the subject is pretty much automatically chosen as the cars that were in the picture. Like I said, the light was changing as the day got on, so some of the photos are automatically a little bit brighter, which aren't a bad thing, because obviously with the brighter photos you can see a little bit more of the tires, and this bug has a lot of awesome mods to it. If I remember it, those are Falcon Azenas, they look like, anyway. But stupid car guy talk, no big deal. So when we get on to this, we're just gonna, like I said, just little adjustments, no major changes or anything like that, so everything stays kind of the same. because of the fact that this one had a bunch of extra edits and stuff like that, I didn't copy and paste those edits, so I'm going to adjust these kind of to match the other one. So we're going to bring the exposure down on this one just a little bit. Shadows are good on that one. Shit. Actually, those are pretty good, actually. We're going to keep those as we had them. We're going to bring this down to... Yeah, there we go. That's not too bad. We're going to darken the foreground a little bit more. Yeah, there you go. So like I said, you can kind of tell the ground kind of brings your eyes towards the actual subject that you're trying to draw the viewer's eyes to. When you are, a photographer or a videographer in general, you're trying to make it so your viewer and or whoever is getting the photos, or in general just seeing the photos, knows that obviously that is what you're trying to bring your attention to. Obviously, as a car photographer, your main subject is going to be what people are looking at. But if you have other cars in the scenes, or you have other people, anything like that, you can kind of go to your eyes can wander sometimes. So that's why a lot of places, a lot of people, go through and try to look at other things. But anyway, I'm just blabbering. So yeah, that's pretty much that. There isn't a whole lot of difference. I took a little bit more of the ground on this one, which I don't really like, because this one was a bit more centered. I kind of like the other one better, so I'm gonna actually just delete that, because honestly, less space that you're taking up on your canvas, the better. So don't ever feel like you need to keep every single photo that you culled in the first part. You can always go back and change that. You can always go through, and if you don't like a photo, you can just say, screw you, I don't want to deal with you right now, or whatever. But yeah. Okay, so this one's a little bit of an issue, because the light is a little bit brighter on this one, so we are actually going to bring the darkness and exposure back on that. And then we're gonna drop the exposure and the probably the shadows quite a bit. Bring the whites down. There we go. Yeah, bring those down a bit. Let's go 40. Bring the shadows back up. Because with this, you're trying to make it look natural enough. Whenever you are actually getting the car looking right. In the past, I have been known to brighten the car way too much, so it looks almost like it's copied and pasted to the photo, which you don't want to do, because obviously whenever you're editing and stuff like that, you've got different things to go through, and your editing needs to stay consistent. But yeah, no big deal. So now that we've kind of set this scene the way we want it to, bring that down just a little bit. I'm going to copy and paste this photo now. That way we can make adjustments later on. Yeah, see, that looks pretty good. I think we can bring this back just a little bit, not too much. Gives the car itself just a little bit more. There we go. The ground looks good. Doesn't look too dark. Doesn't look too unnatural. Okay, so with this photo, there's a little bit of things that I really don't want in the photo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the remove tool, and then I'm gonna basically hit the remove AI. So AI is kind of do its thing. I don't really want this car in the background, and then I also don't want this pole. So I'm gonna highlight all that. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, so yeah, so you highlight this, and then you come over to the remove point, hit the remove tool, and AI kind of does its thing. Sometimes it fails, and then you just kind of have to redo everything. But most of the time, it does a phenomenal job. Like crazy good AI in Lightroom nowadays is kind of scary. But yeah, so pretty good. So because of the fact that we are going through and editing the actual photos itself, we can basically make it so we are going through and editing the actual photos itself. Sorry about that. My dogs came in; they were being loud. Anyway, so when you edit a photo that has remove tools, if you edit the photo and then remove something, you basically have to go back in and readjust whatever you have edited. So I took the pole and the other car out. If I really wanted to, I could probably take this out as well. I mean, let's just do it. Look at that. Look how good that is. Like, that's crazy what AI does nowadays. Unfortunately, you do still have some reflections in the paintwork, but most people, as long as you don't know that there was a car there in the first place, you're not really going to tell. So now we're going to paste the edits. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. So it's a little dark actually. Just a tick. Yeah. That's good. Just insane what editing does, you know. And obviously this is my editing style. Other people have theirs. It's not always cut and dry whenever it comes to a person's editing style, because obviously this is art. You know, you're going through and making art. You obviously have interpretation of other people. Not everybody has the same taste. Obviously I enjoy a little bit warmer, a little bit darker photos. I just think it gives a nice moody sense to the vibe. Other people may not, but you know, it's up into interpretation from the viewer. Honestly, this is like one of my favorite pictures from the meet. I don't know why. It just looks so good. Oh yeah. So one thing that does kind of suck about using the auto feature in Lightroom is you kind of have to pick and choose your battles. So we're gonna go up here and it's actually not too bad. I mean, this guy's way too blown out to bring back, unfortunately, but not a huge deal. I'm gonna bring these shadows up just a little bit though, just in the background. Okay. Actually, I'm going to bring the darkness up on this, because with this photo you get a bit of what is called foreground and background. So the foreground is kind of the grass in front of the car. You could do the foreground with the pavement. It's a little harder to do because obviously you have to kind of basically put your camera on the ground, and then the car looks a little bit too dramatic. I like to keep mine almost to the top of the wheel well, or like just to the middle of the tire, or tire middle of the wheel, so you can basically have the car sitting dramatically, but not so much that it looks like it's overpowering the entire. Yeah. So. Alrighty. So now we are going to go into there. See, if we bring up the shadows a little bit too much, then it's gonna look a little unnatural. So we're gonna keep it at that at 20. 22 is fine, whatever. So Alright, we're gonna move on to the Stacia now. Like I was saying before, we do have foreground and background, which is pretty cool. It just kind of gives a nice increase to the actual car. I'm gonna actually delete the foreground, so bring this up a little bit. Like I was saying, as the day was growing on, it was getting darker, so a lot of these photos we're gonna have to start changing the edit, bringing the exposure up a little bit more, because we like darker photos, but obviously a little too much moody. Still good though. Yeah, like I said with this photo, I probably should have done a bit more of the actual. I should have upped the exposure and the aperture up a little bit, just because obviously the only thing really in focus is the Stacia badge, which, you know, not a huge deal, but it's kind of annoying. Once again, we are going to delete this mask just because I don't think I need it, at least for right now. I'm going to bring the exposure up just a little bit. I think that'll do. So this is kind of what I was saying whenever it comes to a little bit more of a dramatic sense to the photo, because I'm actually down a hill to shoot this photo. Unfortunately, it does cut off the tires a little bit because obviously there's a curb right there. But this gives the car kind of a more dramatic sense of feeling. It just brings, obviously this is the tail end, so it's a little different, but yeah. So one thing that is kind of annoying, whenever it does come to shooting white cars, although I love white cars and I love red cars, a lot of times with red, it does end up, if you're editing certain things about the car, it will sometimes bring a magenta color instead of the red. And then with white, you end up editing the car and it turns almost like a gray or silver. So just be really careful with your blacks and your whites. Usually whenever it comes to white cars, I obviously try to bump the white editing section up a little bit, just so you kind of keep the whites, and then just make sure to just watch your colors, because without any notice, sometimes your colors can just completely change without any kind of sense. But I am actually going to bring a little bit on the sky for the backside. Not a whole lot, but just enough. And then exposure down a little bit on the car itself. And we're actually going to add that mask back in, the linear mask. make sure to subtract your subject. Nope, I said subtract. Subtract your subject. There you go. So now it's not a whole lot, but it'll unclick the tires and potentially some of the undercarriage. So whenever you darken it up, see, just like that. Like I said, we're gonna up the whites quite a bit just so we can keep that nice bright white color. We're gonna drop the back down to normal. So one thing that you have to kind of sometimes make sure to watch is up here in the window. So windows naturally cast a blue/aqua color. So if you take that away just a little bit, you don't have to take a whole lot, but just enough of the blue and the aqua away, you can actually see how the window is turning back to kind of the natural silver color, or white, or less blue. You don't have to do that on every color. Every car is different, obviously. Just make sure to watch that, especially whenever you're editing. But if you're shooting a blue car specifically, you can actually you can highlight the window itself and change the color that way. That way you're not screwing up the entire color of blue, just the windshield. But for this one, I'm not worried about it, just because obviously we're not shooting a blue car, and there's no real blue aspects to the car, so no worries on there either. Okay, so this is actually a little bit too bright. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go bring these all back down a little bit. Not a whole lot, but this needs to go even darker. Keep it natural is the name of the game. Obviously, you want to make sure that your subject pops, but not so much so that you can kind of tell that the photo was manipulated too much. Okay, so these tighter shots, I can actually pretty much bring everything back to a normal standard. Don't necessarily bring the shadows up as much. Okay. Rear of the car. Okay, so we're gonna delete that mask, but we are gonna drop this quite a bit because I bumped the ISO quite a bit on the on this photo, because like I was saying, the day was very quickly losing light. Actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna kind of do the opposite effect. So I'm gonna bring the mask the other way around. I'm going to subtract our subject again. Drop everything behind it just a little bit. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. And then we're gonna also drop the exposure on the car itself because it's gonna look a little too halo-y. It looks almost like I said, a copy paste, which we don't want. So shadows down there. There you go. That's not too bad. Gives a little bit of pop, but not quite so much that it looks unnatural. So we can get everything kind of popping all nice. Perfect. Looks pretty good. Honestly, this interior is pretty good. I don't think I'm gonna mess with it a whole lot. I'm gonna swap it over to auto, so we're gonna get a little bit more color on the inside there. And the thing about it is, you know, don't be afraid to use auto. The biggest thing whenever it comes to editing is auto is your friend. Really, honestly, you're not gonna be worrying about if you use auto nowadays. It's not bad. You know, it has its uses. Don't use it all the time. I mean, yes, I use it most of the time, but you know, change up your settings yourself sometimes. Play around with things. Obviously, add different things. Like I said, I like to add a little bit more magenta to my photos, just because it takes away some of that more greeny haze. And then, like I said, edit your photos how you think you like them. It's art, as I've said before. It's your photo. Edit how you feel like editing. I think that's pretty good, though. It's not a super dramatic change, but we're not looking for dramatic changes. We're just looking for slight touches of the edits. Now that I'm looking at this, I don't really like this photo, so I'm gonna actually delete this one. There we go. Okay, so we're actually gonna go back to this first photo. That one. Then we're going to copy these settings because we're going back to the Stasia and back to exterior photos. Down quite a little bit. That's already down quite a bit. That's not too bad, I guess. It was already pretty dark or pretty bright whenever I took the photo, so just kind of brings out the green color in it. Okay. As I was saying with the light, it's definitely starting to show how dark it's getting. I mean, these cameras are amazing in low light, but even the best camera has its limits. I mean, obviously, I could have bumped the ISO and everything else a lot more. I could have done a little bit more, but again, this was kind of just a thrown together thing. I wasn't trying to do a whole lot of editing. I wasn't really trying to screw around and make everything crazy perfect. It was just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, you know. Just quite a bit. Like I was saying, make sure your whites are popping on your white cars, because it's a huge mistake. It will follow suit with the auto now. That one's not too bad. I think I'll keep that probably the way it is. So I will say I screwed up, I think, on this one because for some reason the car, I think as I took this photo, the camera decided it wanted to focus on the back side of the car and not the front side. So this whole front side of the car is completely out of focus. So as unfortunate it is, I think I will probably just get rid of this photo. It's not a bad photo, but I just... The subject that I was trying to shoot was not what ended up being in focus, so upsetting as it is. I'm just gonna delete that. Gotta love the puppers. Obviously, you won't probably edit these photos quite the same. You'll kind of go back and forth. If you're shooting people and cars and animals and everything else, you will obviously you are not going to edit an animal or a person the same way you would a car, but the general rule still applies. You usually want to bring up the brightness of the photos a little bit more, just because obviously you're trying to show the dogs. But the cars, we're gonna drop the exposure back down on these. Yeah, not too bad. I mean, these photos are pretty good. I mean, I'm not blown away by them because, like I said, I probably should have bumped the aperture up on a couple of these, especially this one. That the car itself is kind of a bit more out of focus than I liked. Like I said, I myself enjoy a little darker cars, a little darker photos. But to each their own. It's one of my favorite things about photography is, you know, everybody has their own way of editing, own way of taking photos. You know, if your idea of taking a photo is, you know, super dark and moody, or, you know, you crank out the blues. I'm talking to you, Sony guys. It can look super cool to some people and you know, not great to others. And it's the greatest thing about this thing called photography that we do. You can do whatever you want. You know, you can choose to have your photos look one way or another, and no one can tell you, you know, how to edit your photo, because they're your photos. It is art. It is what you choose to be, the way you choose it to be, you know. So but yeah, so that's pretty much it. I'll kind of show you. I'm not going to export them because obviously I'm going to be sending these to some of the owners, and I use that through my phone. I don't really use the computer. Oh, that is a lot more out of focus than I thought it was. Oh, well, that's okay. We'll just delete that. So we're just yeah. So we'll pretty much, if I was using the PC to edit photos or to export photos, I'd come over to this button over here, click this, make sure everything updates. Actually, now that I'm looking, I'm gonna go back to the very first photo, and that's another one thing that is cool. After done editing photos and you're looking at other photos, you can kind of go back and be like, oh, you know, some of these are way brighter than others, or I want that photo actually to be a little bit brighter than what I had edited in the first place. So I'm actually gonna make this just a tiny bit brighter, not a whole lot, just a little bit. There we go. So, because if you go back to this and you kind of look, see how obviously they don't all match perfectly, but they're a little bit more consistent now all throughout. I'm very minimalistic whenever it comes to photos. I don't like to go through and edit photos so dramatically that, you know, it changes everything. I'm not a big Photoshop user. It's also because I have no idea how to use Photoshop, but that's a whole nother story. So, but yeah, that's probably gonna be it for the stream. Real quick before we end, if you are going up to export your photos from your PC, you'll go up to the share button right here. I usually do custom settings just because it's a lot more intuitive. If you have a watermark, so if some photographers use them, some don't, some call them cheesy. I don't really care. Usually the only time that I'll put watermarks on a photo is if I'm giving them out for free, and even then I don't blast my watermark all over. So I'll kind of show you how that looks. But I keep everything in a JPEG setting because obviously it's like I was saying, a little smaller, but it's also the most versatile. So if someone's sharing most, if not all, what are they called? All platforms, allow JPEG and whatnot. Dimensions full size, obviously, because you want them as best as possible. You want them the best quality, so keep that. Obviously, the quality, keep it at 100%. Why would you lower the quality? That seems stupid. Include your watermark. Obviously, I have a watermark on free photos. I don't normally use them a whole lot, but whenever I do use them, I will try to keep them fairly small, between usually 8 and 10. If I'm doing brand deals, or if I'm doing client work, I will usually take the watermark off completely. But I'll usually keep these at 10. That way it's not obnoxiously in your face, but it still keeps it there on the photo. Normally I'm not going to use a custom name. I'll just kind of keep it as the original name. Again, if I'm doing client work, or if I'm going through and sending these to specific people, or especially with weddings, I will do a custom name. I don't ever use output sharpening because that just makes your photos look weird, in my opinion. And then obviously Adobe RGB is just what I've always used. Most people use that. It keeps your colors fairly consistent through your phone and PC and other places where people will look at your photos. So, like I said, I'm not going to export, but if you were to, you would click on the export button and you would find just kind of whatever. You can't see it right now because I'm not showing it, but you would go into wherever you want to put your photos. I have a specific folder that I would put them in, and then you would click that folder, and then it would export to whatever folder you want. But I'm not going to do that because I'm, like I said, exporting to specific people through my phone, so no big deal. It's one reason I do like to use Lightroom, is because obviously they have a mobile phone and it kind of goes up into a cloud setting. So whenever you edit a photo, make sure that this little cloud button here in the corner, if you click it, it'll say synced and backed up. Make sure that is all good, because whenever you switch over to either the mobile or the web browser on a different computer or your phone or something like that, it will show all your edits. But yeah, I think that's probably going to do it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know that this is kind of my first stream, so it's not super crazy, but I do hope you guys enjoyed. And like I said, I'll be uploading this on my YouTube, which is Purple Cyn CYN Media. If you want to check me out, that's pretty much all my social medias. That's miscellaneous. That's my Instagram. That's my social media. That is pretty much all of my everything. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for hanging out. I would love a subscribe, or a like, or any kind of comment. Anything helps push my content to other people. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed and come back for more, because I do gameplay as well, not just editing. This was just kind of something that I had on my to-do list, so I might as well show it to everybody. So like I said, thank you so much for hanging out, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.